My boyfriend called me ugly in front of his friends and broke up with me at a restaurant, then walked out, leaving me to pay for the entire meal. As he left, he said loudly, "A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you." I just smiled and waited quietly. This morning, I woke up to 13 missed calls from him. Honestly, I'm still processing what happened last weekend. I keep replaying it in my head, wondering if I imagined it. But no, my maxed out credit card and the melted ice cream stains on my couch confirm it really happened. For context, Ryan and I had been together for 2 years, not just a casual thing. We had our routine: Netflix on Sundays, family dinners, even a couple's yoga class that neither of us were good at. Things weren't perfect, but I thought we were solid. We'd even talked about moving in together. He had some small habits that annoyed me: leaving socks everywhere, texting during movies, and making helpful comments about my looks. Things like, "That shirt makes your arms look bigger," or "Have you tried a different hairstyle?" I used to laugh it off, thinking he was just being honest. Last Friday, Ryan texted me about having dinner with some coworkers. He'd never really included me in his work life, always saying it wasn't professional. So I was excited. I even bought a new outfit, way over budget, and spent forever getting ready. Full makeup, styled hair, everything. The restaurant was one of those expensive downtown places with tiny portions and no prices on the menu. Red flag number 1. Ryan was already there with 2 coworkers, Leonard and Pablo. The second I arrived, the vibe was off. He barely acknowledged me, just a half stand from his chair, and a quick, "You're late." I was literally 2 minutes late because of parking. Then he looked me up and down and said, "Oh, you wore that?" Loud enough for everyone to hear. His friends exchanged looks, and my face turned hot. For the record, I wore a dark blue dress that I thought looked nice. I tried to laugh it off and asked if there was a dress code I'd missed. He just shrugged and said they already ordered appetizers. The next hour was mostly Ryan talking about work, while his friends nodded along. Whenever I tried to add something, he'd talk over me or correct me. At one point, I mentioned a story from my job, and he interrupted with, "She doesn't really get how things work in the real business world," waving his hand like retail isn't a real job. I've managed a store for 3 years. I remember sitting there wondering if he had always been this dismissive or if he was just showing off. Then Leonard asked how we met, and I started explaining that his coworker Vanessa, who's my best friend, introduced us. Ryan cut me off mid-sentence and said, "Yeah, Vanessa felt bad for her. I was doing her a favor." Then he laughed. My stomach dropped. That's not even close to what happened. Vanessa had actually warned me about his ego before setting us up. I excused myself to the bathroom so I wouldn't cry in front of them. While there, I texted Vanessa, asking what on earth was happening. Then I noticed Ryan had just posted an Instagram story tagging himself at the restaurant with the caption, "Boys' Night Out." I wasn't even mentioned. Vanessa called me immediately, but I couldn't answer. I fixed my makeup, gave myself a small pep talk, and went back to the table. When I sat down, they all went silent. The waiter brought our food, and Ryan started making jokes about my meal choice. I'd ordered pasta, one of the cheaper options, and he said things like, "Carb loading for a marathon," and "Bold choice for someone with your body type." Each comment stung a little more. I barely touched my food, just counting down until I could leave. Then Pablo asked Ryan about a presentation, and Ryan started bragging about how his boss loved his ideas and that he was leading the whole project now. The week before, he'd said he was only presenting for 5 minutes and was nervous. Suddenly, he's the star? When the bill came, Ryan picked it up, glanced at it, then slid it toward me. I thought he was just showing me the total, but instead, he said, "You know what? I don't think this is working. I'm not attracted to you anymore. We should break up." In the middle of a restaurant, in front of his coworkers, after 2 years together. I was completely shocked. He stood up, put on his jacket, and said, "A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you this long. You're not exactly a prize." Then he walked out with his friends, laughing. I sat there, humiliated, staring at a $347 bill for their expensive appetizers and cocktails. The waiter gave me this pitying look that made it worse. I paid with my credit card, already maxed out from Christmas, and somehow made it to my car before breaking down. I called Vanessa, sobbing. She rushed over with ice cream and wine, the real MVP. Between crying and stress eating, I told her everything. She was furious, ready to confront him, but then started asking questions about his work. She finally said, "Sabrina, I don't think Ryan is who he says he is." Turns out, he wasn't a marketing executive about to get promoted. He was an assistant who made coffee runs and scheduled meetings. The business trips? Fake. The big presentation? He was just doing the slides. Even his LinkedIn title was made up. For 2 years, I believed all his lies. That night, I went full detective mode, scrolling through old texts and photos, noticing so many inconsistencies I'd ignored. Comments about money that didn't add up. Late nights when his location showed him across town. I couldn't sleep, just replaying that scene at the restaurant and how small he made me feel. Then around 3 a.m., I got a text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Cody from Ryan's office. Vanessa gave me your number. There's some stuff you should know." And that's when things got even more complicated. First update. Thank you all so much for the kind comments on my last post. I cried reading them, in a good way. A lot of you asked for an update, so here's what happened next. After learning from Cody that Ryan had been lying about almost everything, I spent the next few days in that post-breakup haze, crying, overanalyzing old photos, wondering how I missed the signs. My apartment was a mess. Dishes everywhere, laundry piled up, empty food containers. I even kept catching myself wanting to text Ryan something funny, then remembering what he'd done. I avoided social media because I knew he'd post something cringe. But by Wednesday, curiosity won. I opened Instagram, and there he was, posting a gym selfie with the caption, "Level up, know your worth." The audacity! That evening, Vanessa came over with takeout and found me wrapped in a blanket. She's been incredible through all this, keeping me fed, listening, never saying "I told you so." While we were eating, she showed me her texts with Cody. Apparently, Ryan had been telling everyone at work that he dumped me because I was clingy and obsessed with marriage. Which is ironic, because he's the one who had a Pinterest board titled "Future Home Ideas." He claimed it was for a work project. Then Cody revealed the real bombshell. Ryan wasn't just lying about his title. He was on probation for taking credit for other people's work and was close to getting fired. Those late nights working, he was trying to fix mistakes before anyone noticed. While I was still processing that, my phone rang. It was Ryan's mom, Tina. I almost didn't answer, but she's always been kind to me, so I picked up. She asked if everything was okay because Ryan told the family we'd had a small fight, but we're fine. I said vaguely that we were taking some space. Then she mentioned Ryan's upcoming birthday dinner and said everyone was excited to see me there. Apparently, Ryan told them we were still together and that we had big news to share. I nearly choked. Vanessa stared at me, like I'd lost my mind, and said, "Is he delusional or just a compulsive liar?" Honestly, I was wondering the same thing. That's when we decided we weren't going to just let this slide. Ryan's family had always been kind to me, and they deserved to know the truth about who he really was. Still, I wasn't planning to be petty or start drama. My plan was simple: attend the dinner, stay calm, and let the truth reveal itself naturally. The next day, I met Cody for coffee. It was a little awkward since we only knew each other through Ryan, but he turned out to be genuinely nice. He confirmed everything I'd already learned and added even more details about Ryan's lies at work. The team Ryan claimed to lead? Just him and 2 interns. That big presentation he bragged about? He was only operating the slideshow while his boss presented. Cody seemed genuinely sympathetic, saying he'd always thought Ryan's stories about me didn't sound right. Apparently, Ryan often complained that I was high maintenance, when in reality, I'd been paying for most of our dates near the end. He always said he was between paychecks, though I now realized that was probably just poor money management. Halfway through our chat, Cody got a text from his boss asking him to come in on Saturday evening to help with an emergency project. He looked disappointed since he had other plans, but that's when I had an idea. What if Cody had to drop something off at Ryan's parents' house during the birthday dinner? The timing would be perfect. As we worked out the details, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Ryan, the first since the restaurant incident. It read, "We need to talk about what happened. I might have overreacted." Might have? Cody nearly spit out his coffee when I showed him. Overreacting is getting upset about someone being late, not publicly humiliating your girlfriend and leaving her with a $300 bill. I didn't respond. Let him wait. The next 2 days were a blur of preparation. I wasn't showing up to that dinner unprepared. I went through old texts, screenshots, and photos, matching up all the inconsistencies: fake work trips, made-up coworkers, photos supposedly from company events that were actually downloaded from the corporate website. Friday night, Vanessa came over to help me pick an outfit. Part of me wanted to show up looking incredible just to spite him, but we decided it was better to keep it classy, polished, not overdone. I settled on a simple black dress Ryan once said made me look average, which I later realized was his odd way of downplaying me, since I always got compliments when I wore it. I barely slept that night. What if it went wrong? What if his family believed him over me? By Saturday morning, I'd gone through every possible outcome in my head. Around noon, Ryan texted again. "Looking forward to seeing you tonight. Wear something nice. My parents are excited." I ignored it. Let him think whatever he wanted. That afternoon, Vanessa helped me get ready, calming me down whenever I second-guessed myself. By 5:30, I got in my car. Though my hands were shaking so badly, I had to pull over once to do some breathing exercises. For a moment, I questioned everything. Maybe I should just move on and block him for good. But then I imagined him sitting there at dinner, spinning another lie and playing the victim. That settled it. I arrived at his parents' house around 6:15, fashionably late, which I knew would bother him. The driveway was full. Clearly, the whole family had come. I checked my reflection, took one last deep breath, and rang the doorbell. Ryan's dad greeted me warmly, giving me a hug and ushering me inside. The house smelled like Tina's famous pot roast, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sadness. I'd really liked his family, and this would probably be the last time I saw them. I walked into the living room and spotted Ryan mid-laugh with his cousin. The second he saw me, he froze, clearly not expecting me to show up despite telling his family I would. Panic flickered across his face before he forced a smile, gave me a stiff hug, and whispered, "You actually came. We need to talk privately." I smiled back and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Of course, I wouldn't miss your birthday, especially since you told everyone we had big news to share." The color drained from his face. Tina clapped excitedly and asked if this was what she thought it was. His sister gave me a curious look, and his dad made a joke about future grandkids. Ryan gripped my elbow, trying to steer me toward the hallway, but his mom called out that dinner was ready. We all sat down, and I noticed Ryan's nervous glances. My phone buzzed with a text from Cody. "On my way, 15 minutes out." Ryan leaned over and hissed, "What are you doing here?" I just smiled and replied, again, loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Oh, I wouldn't miss the chance to tell your family about what happened at that restaurant, Ryan. I'm sure they'd love to hear it." The panic on his face as his mom set the food down, worth every ounce of stress. Game on. I'm finally ready to share what happened at Ryan's birthday dinner. Sorry for the delay. I needed a day to decompress from all of this. And my Wi-Fi's been a mess because my neighbor borrowed my password and apparently downloaded half the internet. So where were we? Right, me sitting at the dinner table with Ryan's family, while he silently panicked. Around the table were his parents, Tina and Ralph, his sister Kayla, his grandma, and two cousins whose names I can never remember. The table was set with Tina's famous pot roast, buttery mashed potatoes, and a fancy salad everyone would politely pretend to enjoy. The first 20 minutes were painfully awkward. Ryan kept trying to control the conversation while shooting me warning glances. I just smiled, passed the bread rolls, and watched his left eye twitch every time I spoke. Petty? Maybe. Worth it? Absolutely. Tina did her best to keep things light, asking about my family and work. But when she proudly mentioned Ryan's big promotion, I almost choked on my water. I glanced at Ryan, whose face had turned as red as the beets on the table. He quickly jumped in, bragging about how his team was exceeding targets and how his boss was grooming him for senior management. I just nodded, letting him dig deeper. Then Ralph, who's usually quiet, asked about the Johnson account, a project Ryan had apparently told him he was leading. Ryan's answer was so vague it could have come from a horoscope, something about strategic pivots and leveraging core competencies. Kayla, his sister, met my eyes across the table, raising an eyebrow like, "Is he serious right now?" That's when Tina brought up the big news. She asked if it had to do with us taking the next step. Ryan nearly dropped his fork, mumbling something about it not being the right time. His grandma, who's famously blunt, cut in with, "So, are you two moving in together or what? Ryan said you were apartment hunting." That was news to me. The furthest we'd gotten was joking about sharing a Netflix account to save money. Ryan tried to redirect the conversation by mentioning his company card for business expenses. I couldn't resist asking what kind of expenses he was authorized to approve. He stumbled through an answer about client dinner. That's when I said casually, "Oh, speaking of dinners, Ryan took me to this amazing restaurant last week. What was it called again, honey? The one with Leonard and Pablo?" His face went pale faster than my phone battery dies on TikTok. Before he could respond, the doorbell rang. Perfect timing. Tina went to answer and returned, sounding pleasantly surprised. "Cody, what a nice surprise!" Ryan looked like he might pass out. Cody entered, holding a folder and apologizing for interrupting. He said he had urgent documents Ryan needed to sign for Monday. Tina, ever the hostess, invited him to stay for cake. Ryan tried to usher him toward the door, but Ralph insisted they could handle it right there since we're all family. Cody sat in the empty seat I'd conveniently left open next to me. Ryan was gripping his fork so tightly I thought it might bend. Then Ralph asked Cody how the big presentation went, the one Ryan had claimed to lead. Cody hesitated, glanced at me, then at Ryan, and finally said that the presentation had gone well, but clarified their boss had presented it, with Ryan providing support. Ralph frowned. "That's not what Ryan told us." I jumped in, asking Cody about Ryan's promotion. Poor guy looked uncomfortable, torn between protecting a coworker and being honest. He fidgeted and muttered something vague about company restructuring. Ryan gave a forced laugh and tried changing the subject, but Kayla wasn't letting it go. She asked directly, "So, what's Ryan's actual title?" The silence that followed was heavy. Cody looked at Ryan, who was silently pleading, then at me. I gave him a small nod. Finally, Cody said, "Ryan is an administrative assistant in the marketing department." The room went quiet. Ralph set down his fork. His grandma made a small sound. Kayla muttered, "I knew it." Ryan immediately tried damage control, saying Cody was mistaken, that he had multiple roles, that it was complicated. But it was too late. His family started asking specific questions. When was the promotion? Where was the team? What about the corner office? Every answer fell apart. He kept glaring at me, like this was somehow my fault. But I stayed calm. Tina, bless her, tried to ease the tension, but the truth was already out. Tina tried to lighten the mood by suggesting we all have some cake and move on to happier topics. As she went to the kitchen, Kayla turned to me and asked directly about the restaurant I had mentioned earlier. I knew this was my moment. I took a deep breath and told them everything. How Ryan had invited me to meet his friends, belittled me throughout dinner, then dumped me in front of everyone before walking out and leaving me with a $347 bill I could barely afford. Ryan tried to interrupt several times, but his dad silenced him with a look I'd never seen before. Pure disappointment. Ryan defended himself, saying I was exaggerating, playing the victim, and that I had embarrassed him in front of his colleagues. He even claimed leaving me with the bill was his way of teaching me financial responsibility. His grandmother actually snorted at that. Cody, who had been quiet most of the time, finally spoke up. He confirmed everything I said and added that he'd heard Ryan bragging at work about putting me in my place. He even showed texts from Pablo, proving they'd discussed what happened. Tina walked back in with the cake, just as Ryan tried to make himself the victim again. She set it down and asked what she'd missed. For a long moment, no one spoke, until Ryan's dad quietly said they needed a serious family discussion about honesty. That's when Ryan lost control. He started yelling, accusing me of turning his family against him, calling Cody a traitor, and saying everyone was jealous of his success. What success, though? He knocked over his water glass, pointed at me, and shouted that a girl like me should be grateful he even gave me attention. His mom gasped, his grandma muttered something under her breath, and his sister just shook her head like she'd seen this before. Somehow, I stayed calm and said the only thing I was grateful for was finally seeing who he truly was. Ryan stormed out, slamming the door so hard, one of Tina's decorative plates fell and cracked. After that, the house felt strangely peaceful. Tina apologized repeatedly. Ralph looked exhausted. Then Kayla helped clean up the spilled water. Cody also apologized, saying he hadn't wanted to make things awkward, but couldn't stay silent while Ryan lied. Then, to my surprise, They insisted I stay for cake. So there we were, Ryan's ex, his coworker, and his family, eating birthday cake without the birthday boy. It should have been awkward, but it wasn't. Afterward, I helped Tina in the kitchen. She kept saying she never realized how much Ryan had been lying and looked genuinely heartbroken, not just for me, but for who her son had become. She quietly asked if there had been signs before, and I admitted there were, though I'd ignored them because I wanted to believe the best in him. Before I left, Ryan's dad pulled me aside to thank me for being honest. He apologized for his son's behavior and looked genuinely defeated, like he was questioning where he'd gone wrong as a parent. I told him it wasn't their fault. Ryan made his own choices. Cody walked me to my car, probably sensing I needed time to process everything. As we talked, he mentioned Ryan had been struggling at work for months, taking credit for others' ideas, lying about projects, even faking client emails. He was apparently one warning away from being fired. Suddenly, Ryan's obsession with looking successful made sense. His whole identity was built on pretending to be someone he wasn't. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. When I got home, I saw 3 missed calls from Vanessa, eager for an update. But before I could call her, a text from Ryan popped up. "You've ruined everything. This isn't over." I didn't reply. I blocked his number, made some tea, and sat in silence. I wasn't scared, just tired, and maybe a little proud of myself for finally standing up to him. I honestly thought that was the end of it. But the next morning, my phone lit up with 13 missed calls from Ryan's mom, his sister, Cody, and several unknown numbers. Something had clearly happened overnight. I woke up Sunday morning to my phone buzzing nonstop. At first, I thought something terrible had happened. There were multiple missed calls, 5 from Tina, 3 from Kayla, 2 from Cody, and several unknown numbers. I called Tina first, since she sounded the most panicked in her voicemails. She picked up right away, exhausted and shaken. Apparently, after storming out of the dinner, Ryan had gone on a drinking spree and showed up at his ex-girlfriend's apartment around 2 a.m., yelling that I had ruined his life. I hadn't even known he had an ex. The woman called Kayla for help, who had to pick him up. But it didn't stop there. Ryan had spent the night sending angry messages to everyone we knew. He texted Cody, threatening to ruin him at work, posted a rambling Facebook status about being surrounded by traitors, and even sent my address in a private message to Pablo, saying he was going to make me pay. Thankfully, Pablo forwarded the message to Tina, who had been trying desperately to reach me ever since. I sat there in my pajamas, trying to process everything, while Tina apologized over and over. I wasn't even scared, just emotionally drained, like waiting for your phone to finally die so you can recharge it. Tina insisted on coming over to make sure I was okay. She showed up with Kayla and a box of pastries. We sat around my tiny kitchen table while they explained that Ryan had a long history of lying. Even back in college, he'd fabricated stories about being on the baseball team and dating people who didn't even know him. As they talked, my phone kept buzzing with texts from friends reacting to Ryan's social media meltdown. Vanessa wanted to come over for safety, convinced this was turning into a true crime story. Then, the doorbell rang again. We all froze, but it was just Cody. He came to warn me in person, since Ryan had mentioned paying me a visit. So now, there we were, Ryan's mom, sister, coworker, and me, sitting in my living room, trying to figure out how to handle this situation. Cody said their boss already knew about Ryan's online rant. Someone had taken screenshots and reported it. Kayla worried that losing his job might push Ryan over the edge. And then another knock at the door. This time, it was my building manager. He said Ryan had been downstairs causing a scene, demanding access to my apartment. The manager had refused and threatened to call the police, so Ryan stormed off, after shouting insults loud enough for the whole building to hear. Tina was devastated, apologizing again and again. Kayla stayed calm and advised me to document everything, just in case. Then, a new notification popped up on my phone. Ryan had tagged me in an Instagram story. Against everyone's advice, I looked. It was an old photo of me asleep on his couch, captioned, "Miss Perfect isn't so perfect. She should be grateful anyone took pictures of her at all." Honestly, I laughed. If that was his big revenge, I'd survive. Then came the pounding on my door. Ryan's voice, slurred and angry. I immediately called building security. Ryan started yelling and kicking the door until the guard arrived and told him to leave or face the police. Eventually, things went quiet. The guard confirmed Ryan had left the building but was waiting in the parking lot. Tina insisted on going down to handle him, with Ralph coming to pick them both up soon after. It was all just sad. After they left, Cody and I sat in silence until he asked if I had any wine. We shared a bottle I'd been saving, which honestly felt fitting after everything. Later, Vanessa came over and stayed the night, just in case. Thankfully, Ryan didn't return. In the following weeks, things slowly settled. Ryan was fired for missing work and sending inappropriate emails. He moved back in with his parents, and later to his uncle's place out of state. Kayla and I still talk. She's actually become a friend. Ryan tried reaching out a few more times, leaving voicemails that ranged from angry to tearful. I never replied. He even made fake accounts to message me, but they were so obviously him that I just blocked them. The last time I saw him was by chance at Target. He looked exhausted and walked away without saying a word. That was 3 months ago. His social media has been quiet since, and Kayla says his parents finally told him to get help before they'd support him again. As for me, I'm doing well. I've redecorated my apartment, replaced everything that reminded me of him, and even found an unexpected friendship with Cody. We're not dating, but we talk often. It's nice to have someone who understands what I went through. Looking back, I'm not angry anymore. If anything, I'm grateful, not for the relationship, but for finally seeing the truth before it was too late. I can't imagine what my life would be like if I hadn't.